So this is chapter 5. Upon entering the home of Professor Winston, I find him sitting on the back porch next to a bottle of scotch, gazing into the distance, probably in deep thought. "Charles, I was just thinking about you. Have a seat. Would you like a glass of scotch?" "Please." He grabs the bottle and fills a small glass and hands it to me. "Thank you, Professor." I take a sip of the scotch and look into the distance, appreciating this moment in time and grateful to be back home in the graces of the good doctor. Then I come back to reality. "Professor, not to worry you, but as of lately I've managed to find myself in a bit of a predicament." "How so?" "Where do I even start? You know that billionaire that died? Harold Johnson?" "Yes, that guy. Since my leave from the Bureau, I've been digging up some dirt on him, and it led me to this secret military base in northern Oregon. I actually visited the black site, and what I discovered was the most abominable thing I've ever seen in my life." I take another sip from the scotch in preparation to explain what I saw. "I managed to sneak into the place, and while inside, I came upon what I believe was an extraterrestrial biological entity." "Is that so? Are you completely sure on this?" "It was a 4-foot green creature with an abnormal-sized head. And you know what it was doing? It was copulating with an abducted prostitute." "I don't like the sound of this, but please do go on." "Sometime after witnessing that, I managed to come in contact with the abducted hooker. I almost managed to facilitate her escape until she abruptly collapsed and gave birth right in front of me. It was insane because she didn't even have any indications anatomically of being pregnant. Also, as I was leaving the base, I saw some adolescent children of about 6 years of age reading literature that should be way beyond their underdeveloped aptitudes. The operation is called Nephilim, like the biblical text." "This sounds very dangerous, Charles. I must put my foot down and demand that you stop this investigation before it becomes fatal. I can guarantee if you persist into this guff, you'll find yourself in one hell of an asshole covered in shit. Remember that pledge you made to me when I first began to apprentice you? The cause should always be your pursuit. Is that not the code we live by? This is certainly not in the best interest of that oath. Please tell me you haven't forgot about this pledge." "Professor, I thought exposing this evil would be a great contribution to the cause." "So you're feeling Socratic, is that it? You want to become a martyr? Let's get one thing straight right now. As smart as Socrates was, he was a goddamn fool for not renouncing his position against those charges of denouncing the gods and corrupting the youth. Yes, it was foolish to drink the hemlock and utter his last words as a joke, sacrifice a cock to some Greek god that people at that time were superstitious of. Well, let me tell you, Charles, death is no laughing matter. Once the Grim Reaper comes and slices you in two, there's no coming back from that. This is the biggest lesson we should learn from Socrates. Not let whatever brilliance you have get to your head. You could be a genius, and he would make you feel as if you knew nothing. But look at how his demise came from that foolish pride. Socrates started to fight from the outside, and that is what ultimately led to his downfall. But we fight from within, and once we get close enough to the cancer that is eating away at this world, we'll rip it clean out before it has its chance to spread further. That is why I pursued my career as I have. I waited until I completed my doctorate and was an established professor before I published my treatise on the anus complex. Think if I would have hastily promoted it before I became an accredited professor, the critics would have deemed me a quack, and I would have not had the necessary means to defend my theory. But look at what happened because I waited until the time was right. I turned the whole world of psychology upside down, and when I won the Nobel Prize, I lifted the veil from the eyes of a whole generation of scholars who were bored to death with organized and conventional psychology. So you see, when the time was right, I struck and made an intellectual mockery of their pretentious bullshit and broke down their pillars, paving the way for a new light to shine. Now, before I get too far off track, I want you to realize the danger you're now in. Do you even realize that the men that have orchestrated this have powers that are way beyond any realms that you nor I can touch? I can guarantee they know your identity by now, so let's hope they don't take drastic measures and make you drink that hemlock as Socrates did. Right now, we can only hope they choose to discredit whatever type of evidence you may think you have. I pray for the latter. You know, this will probably end up in your resignation from the Bureau and very likely criminal prosecution if you choose to fight back." I take another sip of the scotch. "I'm sorry, Professor." "My dear boy, don't be sorry to me. Be sorry that you ever brought into this foul world, forced to be so far separated from what that foolish martyr said was right, just, and good. Now enough of this talk. Let's just enjoy the fact that you're safe and back home in one piece. The professor raises his glass, and we toast to what he just said, but deep down, I know I can't turn back now. So against his wishes, I'm going to see this thing through and get to the bottom of what I saw. Hopefully I don't meet the same fate as Socrates in my pursuit for justice and become a martyr for the cause. Alright, so then it goes on to the next scene. In a warehouse, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, the old man hooked up to that IV with a red substance was being pushed by one of his fellow colleagues in his wheelchair through the halls of a particular warehouse. As they ventured through the halls, they glanced at the displays around them, similar to that of a veterinary setting. All around them stood kennels, but locked inside of these kennels inhabited not animals, but young children, all under the age of 7. These children, being hopeless as they were and not knowing how to properly cope with this bizarre circumstance that they were now stuck in, wailed at the monstrosities that had become of their adolescent lives. Some of these kennels also housed newborn infants in cribs. Some were crying and others were quietly sleeping. Some of these newborn infants would be harvested to become the future leaders of the world, and others would not be so lucky, and would be used by men like the two for their own sick and twisted pleasures. As the two men continued their stroll through the halls of this human warehouse of minors and infants, they sparked up a conversation. The old man in the wheelchair spoke first. You know, if you don't get rid of that pesky Agent Thompson, all of these fruits of our labor could disappear before our very eyes, and we would be put in jail cells, and they will surely throw away the keys. Yes, but I know you have a handle on this, correct? Of course, the same one we hired to silence Harold is tracking the agent as we speak. In no time he should be taken care of. Let's hope so. What a shame it would be for us to lose everything we've worked so hard for. The man pushing his colleague in the wheelchair stopped and grabbed a mason jar with a pickled adrenal gland inside of it from a shelf, screwed it open, and took a large gulp. After ingesting the substance, he let out a loud belch. As they continued strolling through the perimeters and conversing, the wails of the forsaken children rang through the halls to an indisputable tone. Hopelessness. But the two men cared not for mercy and just kept walking through the warehouse. Hopelessness was not an emotion that they cared for or even recognized. That's some good stuff, my friend. That it is. Alright, so now we go on to the next scene. Against my better judgment and the wishes of my mentor, I make a move that could possibly ruin not only my career, but bring an end to my life. I'm sorry, Professor, but it looks like I'm caught inside of the abyss of that awful stink box covered in shit. And the only way I see myself escaping is through a bowel movement once I drop a laxative right into the digestive tract of the beast. The only way I can accomplish this is by gathering more incriminating evidence. That is why I have chosen to meet with Nikki and wire her up with a recording device both optically and acoustically broadcasted to my phone. Sure, once it's said and done, I'll be covered in this shit. But what other option do I have? I refuse to wave the white flag now and walk away with my tail tucked in between my legs. In the pursuit to further this investigation, Nikki had previously been in contact with me explaining how girls had been coming up missing and how some strange-looking military types had been frequenting the club, offering an extensive amount of money to do a private show at a certain location. They would give any girl willing to do it. This disturbed her. Being street smart and knowing if they were offering this much of an amount of money, there was something to it. I didn't stay much longer after I wired her up, and once I left her side, I showed her the screen on my phone and told her I was her guardian angel, so not to worry because I was going to protect her. She just smiled with an almost innocent-looking expression on her face. But I knew this was only a facade. She was definitely scared because she knew the kind of danger she was now in.